Welcome to another episode of How Real Estate Changed My Life. And if you've listened to any of them prior to this one, it's all about me just visiting with people that can honestly say real estate has changed their life. I mean, always to the good, of course. But today I've got Jeremy Scott here. He is a local real estate investor, broker, you name it, a whole bunch of stuff. And he's got a great story about how he got into real estate, what it's done for him, some awards he's gotten recently for being in real estate. We'll talk about that too. And I knew of you, but I didn't meet you until we were at that award ceremony. So that's kind of cool. So Jeremy Scott, hey, tell me about you real quick and everybody listening.
Yeah, you nailed it. So Kyle and I had been doing business together without even knowing it.
Yeah.
Then I started knowing who he was, right? The last name, he's got a very unique name, right? Sticks around, you can remember. And then realized like, oh man, hey, that's who he is. And I don't think I had seen you before, but maybe a picture or something on Facebook, but just through, one of your contractors. But long story short, I knew who he was. So I was like, hey, I'm going to go introduce myself. And we met up at the Aggie 100, which I'm sure you guys all know about if you know Kyle and you've been watching this show, but it is a prestigious honor and I'm proud of it. We're not big braggers, but that one is one I like.
You earned it. There's two things to be proud of. One, you're an Aggie. That's enough. You can walk tall because of that. And the other is like you've accomplished something with your business that very few people can say they've accomplished. And that's be one of the 100 fastest growing Aggie owned companies out there over, was it 5-year period of time? I think it was 3-year period of time, depending. So that's something to be really proud of because there's always a lot of work behind the scenes that people don't see or realize.
Big time. Big time. And I think you nailed it. It's that behind the scenes stuff, right? And that's really the hard part of real estate. If you want to nail it down to whatever you're doing, it's like everybody thinks they get into real estate and it's going to be easy. Well, it's that under the table stuff that you just mentioned that makes people successful. And that's what you and I are good at.
Yeah. Well, so you started as a real estate agent. Is that correct? Is that what I remember?
Correct.
So all these people, they sign up for I don't know if you went to a live classroom or if you went to a virtual one but when everybody signs up to be a real estate agent and they hear about, they're going to make $100,000 their first year out and everybody's going to be doing this, go out and buy their Cadillacs the next couple of months and just go wild. But then 2 months go by and they're like sitting at their desk, like, where are all these, I was supposed to get all these transactions. Why am I not making all this tons of money? And it's because there's a whole lot of work behind the scenes. So that's where you started, right? You started as a real estate agent. So how did that happen? And why did they go into that to begin with?
Yeah. So right out of Texas A&M, Sewell Automotive is a heavy recruiter. So I did the Sewell route and we chatted about that when we met up the other day. Enjoyed it, would have risen, but didn't like the car business. Just wasn't for me. Love Sewell. They're awesome. You should buy all your cars there. I learned a lot about business. Mr. Sewell's book is amazing and really just learning how a multi-billion-dollar operation ran from the inside out in the different departments. That was super advantageous where I'm at now. But what was most advantageous then was that raw client shows up, your goal is to sell them a car. That's it. Yeah. There is no better raw sales training than that. And you either sink or swim. And I would say that sales training from the car business has been massive going into the real estate business, but it doesn't mean like I was a success immediately. Far from it. I had saved a bunch of money from the car business, a bunch, it's all relative, but enough to where I was comfortable to move over and start this venture. Well, this venture started with me playing golf 3 times a week and trying to become a day trader. Real estate went to the back burner until I lost a bunch of money on some trades because I'm an idiot and then needed to make money. So real estate was my vehicle to do that. And that actually happened twice. One was a big loss and one was a very, very big loss. But I had to get really good really quickly because I had bills coming up that I had to pay for. Not I wouldn't humble myself, go back to the car business, but it was more like, I'm not going to look these guys in the eyes and say I failed.
Right. Yeah.
That was massively motivating.
Yeah.
So that was good. And then got into real estate, realtor after that, did deals, worked with a bunch of buyers who eventually turned into sellers and did it all referral business. Actually, I didn't do any lead gen. So that's one thing we focus on now is only lead gen, and we teach you how to do it. We don't do it for you, but we do provide you leads, right? I guess we do some of it for you. But what we do now is like a model. You come with us, you're going to succeed if you do what you're supposed to do because you get the business to do that. And if you don't do what you're supposed to do, which is the nitty gritty behind the scenes, showing up to the office, making the calls, putting out the offers, going on the appointments, that's how you make money in real estate, right? You don't make it by
teaching people how to do the work to get the work. It's not just driving around looking at houses. You got to find the people.
Right. And Kyle is doing that on an awesome scale. I respect and admire because he's got good people. I met a lot of them, and they are people
I'm very blessed.
Big time. And that's the one thing too that I find is like I feel like I'm going to bring it up. I feel like God does put the right people together. You know what I mean? And and if you are praying about that type of situation, you will attract good talent.
Oh yeah, he wants everybody to be successful.
Right. So yeah, that's kind of the short journey. And then man just did the realtor thing. It's like I don't want to do this forever. Quite literally watched those flipping shows, and I was like, man, I think I could do that.
Those are fun to watch, weren't they?
Yeah,
I watched them all.
What was your favorite?
You know, I like the Montelongos, the Flip This House, and they were in San Antonio. And I think what I liked about it is they were dealing with entry-level homes, and they were dealing, and San Antonio was a market not dissimilar to DFW as far as it wasn't like $1 million homes. It was $100,000, $150,000 homes, 3 1s, 3 2s, just nothing sexy, just solid houses. And they had it integrated their whole business from like they had their contractors in-house, they had their financing in-house, they sourcing the deals. So those are the ones I really enjoyed watching. And then there's a gentleman out of South Carolina, I forget his name, but I liked his business model too, because he was more on he had a business similar to mine as far as like I think they had a property management business, and they had, the flipping houses, and he was more similar to my business model here.
Interesting. Because that's funny. You resonate with who's like kind of your more business model, right?
Yeah.
Well, then anyway, did the flip game, did a few of them, and wanted to scale that up, and then decided to finally, get to your game. And this is a conversation that I'll share. We were having the other day. It's like, people can start in this journey, and then there's people who can like bypass the beginning of the journey because they either have the income already, they have the manpower or the capital backing, right? So our conversation was around, what I'm really good at is getting in the trenches and finding the deals. And what Kyle's good at is getting them, buying them, and managing them, right? So he kind of bypassed that whole part where now I'm trying to continuously earn capital and find private lenders to be able to invest back into more long-term stuff, right? So it does seem like you start at the short term, and everybody's goal should be long-term.
Yeah, everybody should be long-term. And you have to do the short-term game to get to the long-term. So I've done it all. Like I've sourced deals, and it was different back when I started. I was just sending postcards to non-owner occupant homes, and now I don't know if that model really works, because I used to have a calculator. I had an Excel spreadsheet that I knew exactly how much I had to put in to get this much out. And then even when it came to property management leads, how much money do I have to put into Google ads to get a property management account? And how many of those do I need to get to pay my bill? So I had it all Excel spreadsheeted out. And so it was one of those things where, man, it was scary when I got first started. Everything you do in this business, you got to think about long-term. Where are you going to go? Because I see all these people that wholesale houses, and then they spent all their profits and they didn't have anything left over when the market moved, they were just left behind. So
they went and bought a car.
Or they flew to some crazy resort in Mexico and blew it all, and they came back thinking they were going to get another $20,000 gig the next day. And that just doesn't always happen. You can't always count on that. I've made some good licks on some houses, but man, I'm afraid to spend money sometimes. I've gotten a little looser than I should be sometimes, but I was, you're always worried about the next time you're going to starve. Right.
You're not kidding. And guys with success, you do really, really well. And there's people who just do really, really, really well, but everybody's got the same entrepreneurial mindset, right? It's cyclical. It's up, it's down, ebbs and flows. And that mentality worked, which you were just saying, when the market was going like that.
Yeah.
But now you actually have to be good. You have to know what you're doing. You have to be savvy. You have to work on your skills, right? Otherwise, it's hard to survive in a 7 to 8% interest rate market.
And there's a whole lot of, and to be a real estate agent starting right now, I would be very nervous. I'd be very nervous. So I'd want to hook up with a guy like you who kind of helps put together the path or the plan.
I appreciate you saying that, because I am loving it. You know why? There's so much market share, and I can tell that realtor right now, focus on buyers. I can tell you the ads to run, the leads to get, give you buyers, and have you go succeed. You know what I mean? As opposed to like, God, what do I do? The market changed.
Yeah.
There's a book called The Shift by Gary Keller. Think what you know about Keller Williams. Yeah. Book is amazing. I highly recommend it.
They put out several really good books in a short period of time, and I don't think they've put anything since, but they've had some good ones like Millionaire Real Estate Agent, Millionaire Investor. I used to give those books out to people when they were first either in the business or investing. Those were nice gift books to give out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah, but same thing with, you have to have a plan. Like I had an Excel spreadsheet that I knew exactly how much I had to put into Google Ads and which ones and what would come out. Same thing with you on helping an agent get started. So,
Absolutely.
Is there something that you see in an agent that you're like, that guy's going to be, or that lady's going to be successful, and then that one's not? How long does it take you to figure that out?
Man, I love that question because I've been so wrong so many times. The person who I thought would be dominant sucks. The person who I thought would be like, you're going to have to work pretty hard, but they just get it. You know what? You know what I have found though? It's the following directions. The person, for example, we have someone who is 45 days in the job. They just got their third contract.
That's impressive.
Under contract.
Third.
The man was scared to make a phone call, and I'm happy to say this in front of him, and he would be like, yeah, I was. You know what I mean? He's now very proud of himself because he's getting in there and making the calls. But what I have found is like, he's not a guy I'd bet like, oh man, he's just, you and I could talk to a rock, right? He's not that type of guy. He's more reserved, introvert. But he said, hey man, here's your game plan. Go on your appointment and do this. If it goes this way, we'll do this. If it goes this way, we'll do this. He's so good at following directions. He's motivated to make money, right? So I can't teach that. But what I can teach is a game plan for you to go out and execute. I'd be curious your thoughts on this. I have a hard time with old dogs that aren't willing to get on board with the new tricks, even if they have an awesome resume. We just don't mesh.
Yes. I've hired quite a few people, and it is hard to tell who's going to win. And I don't know. I'm hoping I'm getting better. I really am, because, I'll put somebody on a salary and have a commission incentive, and they'll have this amazing resume, but the motivation's what really matters. Like, they're like, I've saved up a whole bunch of money, so I can make my jump into real estate now. Man, that's almost now it's almost a red flag, because they're like, well, they got the safety net. I want the dude that jumps out of the airplane is like, hey, I'm going to figure this out. Give me some paper mache. I'm going to put a plane wings together while I'm going down. Like, I want that guy that believes in himself. Yeah.
In your own journey, right?
Yeah.
I tutored a 7th grade kid while I was getting going. Just anything I did those marketing. I got paid to go eat at restaurants.
That's a real thing. Sign me up. I need the link. Send me the referral link on that.
I'll have to remember what it was. It was like years ago, but I'm not kidding you. I was like, man, I can go get like $20 to $50 and a free meal. Like, I need that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But you got to do what you got to do to survive, right? Survival is entrepreneurial. Those are like synonyms.
Yeah. There's a lot of creativity, a lot of like just make things happen for you. And too many people sit back expecting that phone to ring or to expect something to happen. And sometimes you have to force it. I mean, because there's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of real estate agents that are going to starve in 2024. That's just what's going to happen.
Why though? I mean, I think there's things that they're not doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, there's always, when you're like Sewell, like luxury vehicles, there's always going to be somebody, no matter how bad the market is, there's always going to be somebody walking in buying a luxury vehicle. Right. So there's always going to be the real estate agents that are uber successful. They are, because they're professionals. They know what they're doing. They got it down. But the thing is we're in a high interest rate market. So there's a lot of people that are not able to buy or willing to buy right now. So there's less transactions. There's some unknowns. I've seen a lot of people get laid off recently. We've not seen it in the news, but there's a lot of layoffs going on. I've seen that. And then, so there's a lot. There's just not hitting the news for whatever reason. And then
I got a couple guesses, but that's not this podcast.
I know. I can go with that too. There's and then on top of that, the profession the board of realtors is getting attacked. And I don't know if we didn't even talk about this earlier, but I think it's getting attacked by the iBuyer programs and the internet transaction software antitrust lawsuits against board of realtors, to where buyers agents can't get paid by sellers agents anymore. So who's going to pay the buyer's agent? The buyers rarely have enough money to barely come down with a down payment. How are they going to pay a real estate agent on top of that? And then they're going to think they can do it without an agent now, even more so. Correct. So it's going to be a more dangerous situation for the buyers. I think I saw a report where they were expecting the average term of home ownership to go from 7 years to I think 11 or 13. I can't remember. It was people were going to trade houses less often because your
payments going up.
Your payments are going up, but then also like your real estate agents, you're not going to have a buyer's rep that's paid for by the seller. So it's going to be interesting.
Isn't this interesting? It's catered and presented as if this is for the little guy, but honestly, big business is going to win. We are going to win in this, but it's not our doing. And I'm with you. It's going to put the buyers at a disadvantage. The buyer's agent thing, I get it, right, with the seller and commission, but they could also say, no, I'm not paying you that, right, and not do the deal with them. So yeah, I'm with you. There's a lot of gray area, but at the end, it's big business is gonna they're winning.
Oh, absolutely. It's frivolous lawsuits. I mean, there's no doubts about it. I mean, they're just, it's for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the people. I think in the buyer's agent, they work harder than a listing agent, in my opinion, by far. It's like there's so much. There's no guarantee you're buying a house for somebody. You're almost guaranteed you're selling a house for somebody if you're a listing agent. And then the energy,
I can count probably, there's homes where you'll show somebody, I mean, quite literally 75 to 100 homes and they'll buy. That's sweet. But you're making like $8 an hour.
Yeah.
Then there's times where you sue 100 to 120 houses and they literally just like, we're going to go buy an RV.
Yeah. I call it better homes and gardens. I don't do better homes and gardens for buying houses for individuals like owner occupants. I've just never been an owner occupant buyer's agent. And I've never been an owner occupant, like my GC company, DFW Landlord Services. We don't do better homes and gardens. We do investment properties. Because we if there's somebody living in the house and they're going to micromanage things, that's not us. I can't do it.
Right.
So it takes a unique personality to be able to pull that off on a buyer's agent side. They work hard.
Well, you're right. The end game is not being a realtor. Mm-hmm. The realtor is a means to an end to get access to investment properties so you can no longer do real estate if you don't want to as a realtor. It does pay the bills and it does have some big paydays, so it's worth it. But at the end of the day, it's like if you're not buying for long term,
it's a job.
Not wise. Yeah. You're never going to get out of the rat race, right?
So tell me, how did you get into the buying your long term stuff?
Cherry picking some deals for the flips, right? And producing that income. But then I guess now our process is different. The other ones, it was more like it wasn't selling, so we jumped into it. And now it's like we put up 3 or 4 different fishing lines, whichever one hits quickest, that makes the most sense is what we go with. And you and I have had that conversation. And I do have rentals, converting some of them into seller finance notes, right? Where there's appreciation and amortization. Both of them are good. If you have them, you're doing better than the average bear.
Yeah, there's no wrong answer. It's just, everyone,
to each their own. But really just started picking those off, man. And then some tenants, it's like, God, I bought this. They said you made payments for 10 years. Like, if we up it a little bit and you save for some sort of down payment, wouldn't you want to buy this thing? And been able to help at least 2 different people, who would have had no idea or how to buy a home that they were renting in anyway. And what I like is that the repairs, I don't have to deal with it, and you can charge a lot of interest. Obviously, you have a very valid point. You lose control of that asset. I'm trying to get banks to lend collaterally on the note and the debt itself. That is an issue. Okay,
I can help you with that. Now I don't do it, so I don't have the connections, but I know the people that do that as their business model. Like they'll use they sell an owner finance almost all their notes, but they have banks that they collateralize those notes.
Dude, I would love for you to get me in touch with those people.
I won't even charge anything for that.
I'll buy you lunch.
Yeah, there you go. But I fake booked creep you a little bit, and I know I think you got a class either tonight or a couple of nights from now about investing in notes. So tell us about what you're doing there.
Yeah. So that is kind of a perfect segue, is just buying debt. There are, in the same way that you can buy a house, send out a postcard like you were doing, they call, you monetize it, et cetera. You could you can get a list, mail out for debt, and try to, let's say it's $100,000 for round set, note. If I can, in a perfect world, let's do that YouTube thing where I get it at $60,000, right? Realistically, it's probably more like 75 to 90.
Right.
But that's your discount right there. So boom, if I buy $100,000 note for $60,000, that's $40,000 immediately discounted, not including the interest that amortizes on top of that. So that's really yield. I love talking about yield. And if you can get that discount combined with that interest, your yield goes up astronomically to where, in my opinion, if you're not making double digits, especially with this inflation market, you're not getting ahead.
Yeah.
You have to get that kind of return to stay ahead, especially right now. But you can buy that debt and you can actually create that debt. And I've started creating it too, which is really fun because that's how you get the ultimate discount, Because if you buy this property at a discount, rehab it, sell it for more, so you got that equity, and then you're paying interest on the equity created long term. That's super fun to me.
Yeah, creating it. You're making it happen. It's that entrepreneurial bug in you that sees how you can create money out of, in essence, nothing, or with the little Lego pieces you have, you're able to build a castle.
Right.
And there's so many people out there that are like looking at all those Lego pieces like that's just a bunch of mess. But it's like you have the little book on how to put those pieces together in your head, or you can create that. So there's people out there that have that ability, and you're one of them.
Well, I would say I'm very good at action taking, probably like yourself. This isn't something like Jeremy is just born and this was in his brain. I had to learn it all, right? A lot of money on coaching, a lot of money on books. My Audible account has 100 and something books in it. I've listened to every single one of them, most of them more than once. And I've learned so much more in that Audible account than I ever have in anything in my entire life, including Texas A&M. Sorry, Texas A&M. But all that business counseling and all those hours read is what transcends to what we can do today. It's not like Kyle McCall Properties is, my favorite saying that I did not come up with was, you were a success, overnight success 10 years down the road.
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
Right? It took 10 years to be an overnight success.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is everybody looks at like, wow, look at what you did. That didn't take you very long. I'm like, no, I starved for a while. Like, and people don't see that.
Well, and it's the same time while you're doing it, they got their heads down. They're like, I can't believe Kyle was doing that. Man, what a risk. Yeah. What a risk. Let us all just continue going to happy hour after work and then going home and doing the same thing forever, watching Netflix, which I do all that. Don't get me wrong. But it's amazing the amount of people that won't dedicate time to better their life. And they're just so content with, hey, this is it. I'm done.
Well, there's a large percentage of the population that when you ask them, so what are you doing for retirement? Or they'll say, well, I'm putting, my 401k match in, and that's it. Like, there's not any more thought into it's just the auto, like, target fund. I retire in 40 years. That's it. They're not putting much effort and thought into it. They're putting more thought into what restaurant they're going to go to on Friday night than they are of how they're going to have resources 20 years down the road. And so that's the scary thing to me is, man, I just don't want to be that guy that just doesn't have anything.
Same, man.
It just freaks me out.
I got family members that are that way, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I know that I've seen people retire with nothing, and I've seen people retire with money, and I'd rather be the one that retires with enough to pay for the nurse, enough, just be comfortable. Unfortunately, it's going to be more and more difficult to be comfortable later on in life than it is now. And so I've kind of had to take my thought process and kind of change it. I used to be like, hey, I just want to get the bills paid. And I think now it's a little bit more like, hey, I need to get ahead of the game because I think the game's going to get harder. And it's just, maybe I'm wrong. I just think that the game's going to get harder.
I don't think
because we got the big companies suing board of realtors, and we got everybody trying to push everybody down. I don't want to get squished. I want to be a little bit higher up.
So here's one of the things too, I like to tell people, and I'm with you 100%. It is going that way, is like these iBuyers, there was a reason why they were able to win deals. It's because they were able to pay more than anybody was willing to pay. They didn't come in because they're more skilled. They had more money and were paying higher prices. We just say, do it. Do your thing. Well, look what happened. They all went out of business. They're about to come back in. They will not ever dominate the top-down sales process like you and I can, because my opinion, they're too big and they're more like, we have all the money. We don't really need to do that. We're going to just base it off projections. And that's what they did. Remember when they came in and started buying, everybody was like, oh, 2030, things are going to go up 4% per year until then. Well, clearly that didn't happen. Anybody who's been around the block probably expected a ebb and flow, whatever, an ebb to come back. So all you're talking about, which is I love, is like you're taking action while you're going to be in a better position, right? Then when it does get hard, and as it gets hard, your front lines being one of those guys who dominates while everyone else, it gets harder for them.
Man, there's so much I can go into the iBuyer business model and why I think it's failed in pieces. It's failed. You can't have people sitting 5 states away that can look on an Excel spreadsheet and say, I'm buying these 50 houses and I'm going to put X amount of dollars in it, when they haven't got real honest boots on the ground to really walk these properties, know exactly what the rehab is, exactly what it's going to be. They're trying to do everything with a computer algorithm. And I respect the technology they're trying to use, but there's some things like that computer doesn't tell you that sheetrock needs to be replaced, or that computer doesn't tell you the flooring's out of date, or, that fan, yeah, that's great in 1980, but, this is 2012 or 2023 or 4. What, like, it's not modern, or it's not, the taste doesn't fit what people want. Like, oh, this house in Keller, like, people don't want the little lines in their windows anymore. They want the full window pane. So that's why that house cost $5,000 more than this house. Like, there's just little things that the computer algorithm does not pick up. And then, so I've seen it happen time and time again where an iBuyer picked up a house, and there's one in my neighborhood. It's sat forever. I'm like, how in the world did this house not get sold? Like, they bought it for too much. I get that. And then they tried to sell it for way too much and didn't. And they still didn't sell it when it got pressed what I thought was too low. But it's just because it was distasteful home and the drainage was messed up. Their computer doesn't tell them the drainage is crazy on the backyard. So there's a lot of things that just don't make sense. And I think it's dangerous that there's that kind of much money behind them to where it throws a whole market out of whack. I mean, you're looking at, let's say Zillow.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Since I would say the word Zillow, I'll probably get shut down on the internet because of the conspiracy theories. But so Zillow goes out there, they have a website, you type in your address and it tells you what your house is worth or what it should rent for. And then they're the guys that come in and offer you to buy your house. Well, the guy that's offering to buy your house is the one that you're looking at to see what it's worth. How do you know they didn't just reduce the estimate value on your house 10 or 20% before they offered you? And then as soon as they bought it, they pushed that number up so that the guy buying the house after you sees that they're getting a good deal. So it's just
why do you think they're suing to get buyers agents away?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm telling you. It's shady stuff. I'm like, I can't believe nobody was looking at that. Like, there was a reason you have third-party appraisers when you're making a bank mortgage. They were everything. They made the whole decision process for people, and people just ate that up. Kind of crazy.
No, I'm with you, man. I love talking about that stuff too. What I'm finding is like the agents that so I'm a part of some masterminds that have some high profile agents that only do real estate, realtor stuff, and then some that will do both investments and whatnot. What I'm finding is all the regular realtors, if you're in San Francisco and you are just doing $1 million houses left and right, and you're making bucos of money, you aren't, because people aren't doing that now. So I'm seeing a lot of those guys who have massive success. We wear Rolexes, driving nice cars, whatever you want to say. They're having to either learn this side of the business, live off their savings, or just get out of real estate. I really think like it's driving it, especially with iBuyers lobbying, controlling the market, and they're wanting to buy. If you don't adopt the we buy houses type thing or learn how to do it, and as a broker teach your agents how to do it, you're leaving a ton of money on the table. You're going to have great talent that would stick around and stay and dominate, leave because of the lack of knowledge. And it just seems like if they're going to cut buyers agents out, going directly to the seller is going to be quite a bit more beneficial. My
business model is I always want to control the product. I don't want to have to go find the product for somebody. I want to control it. So that's why I was like, I buy directly. I buy the property and then I rehab it and then sell it, because then I have control over it. I don't know. I'd like to be in control. And if you're giving it all away, if you are just a buyer's agent only, I'd rather have the asset and sell it because I know I'm going to sell that house. So hopefully.
Well, and then you run around and you're showing 50 investment houses to this cash buyer, and he's throwing out 50 grand under the MLS asking price. It gets disheartening.
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you a secret? This is what I tell people when they want me to be their buyer's agent, which I don't really do much of. I tell them, hey, you're wanting to buy a house. Yep. You got money. You're willing to do it. And so, okay, I'm going to send you 5 houses. You're going to make an offer on every one of them. And they're like, well, I only want to buy one house. I'm like, well, you're going to make an offer on every one of them. And they're like, well, I only want one. I'm like, the one that you like the most, that's your highest offer. But would you say that every house has a price that it makes it a good deal? Every house, at some point, every house makes a good deal. That's the offer you make. That's the offer you make it. Okay, well, it's not offer. It's not the list price. Maybe it's over the list price. You can offer over list and still get a good deal, and you can offer less. Just because that's the price that's listed on the price on the ask doesn't mean that's what I have to offer. So when I'm out and I'm like, Kyle's going to go buy a house this week, I make an offer on every freaking house that I look at. Every one. I've gotten some that I'm like, I didn't really want it, but I made that offer so low that it made sense. I got it.
Interesting.
And there was 1 week I went up. So I do a lot of my stuff in some tertiary markets. And I remember, it's a 2-hour drive to go to some of my markets. And so I went out, I think I drove 4 houses and, made 4 offers, but I only had enough money in my bank that I felt comfortable to take one down. and feel comfortable and not feel like I'm like going to starve. And I ended up getting both of them, or two of the four, two of them. I'm like, crap, what am I going to do? And I'm like, well,
good problem to have.
I'll just take the one that I like more. And the other one, it was only, they were a block away. And so I'm like, oh crap, I've got this one. And here's the other thing. I make offers. I make them, and this is not something you would do in your brokerage. I make them no option period, hard money, like I'm putting a big amount in escrow and no option period. So people, if my offer is lower than ask, then it's a legit offer. Like it's not a crazy wholesaler low price, but it's a legit offer. They take it serious. And so they both took it, and I'm like, well, I got money locked up in this one. And so I just went through my phone list, and I'm like, hey, this guy likes to buy houses that this looks like. So let me call him up. And he's like, yeah. So I just signed it over. I was a real estate agent in that regard. So I just made the real estate agent commission. I didn't mark it up or anything. I didn't get an assignment fee or anything. I just hey,
it's the same thing.
And so I was a buyer's agent in that regard, but I controlled the asset. Does that make sense? So I didn't.
Absolutely.
I'm not driving around looking for that guy a house. I'm like, hey, here's a house. I got it. Do you want it or not? If not, I got 3 more guys I'm going to call after you. And every time I've done that, it's worked out. I've never lost $1 doing it. And that's also how you know a buyer is legit or not. Because that guy that's going to have you drive 50 houses, you're like, dude, I'm not driving you 50 houses. We're going to make an offer on every single house we go into, but we're going to figure out what the price is. And it's just what it makes sense. You're going to agree with the price. But if they don't agree to that, they're not an investor.
That's the best advice that I have actually personally ever heard about that investor who wants to send out a bunch of offers. That is a really good strategy. So if you are brand new and listening to that, like, run with what he said. Yeah. Now, I will say, like, it's a lot easier for a guy like Kyle with a bunch of credibility to be like straightforward, and it is what it is. You may have to be a little nicer and customer service oriented, but his strategy is dynamite.
Well, there's a reason I don't do well with owner occupant homes.
I know.
So I'm an investor.
You and I know that.
So I'm like, man, the more it smells, the more dead rats I see, the more I like it. If I can see through the house, that's like good. That's great. The thing is like, it's not that I have credibility. You just got to do it.
Right. A lot of people want to sit around and wait for permission. And I get that because it happens to me, especially to a certain extent, coaches. But I'll give it to my wife. She was encouraging the other day. She's like, I like your philosophy, but like, you're a little smarter than you give yourself credit. Like, you can make a good decision, go out there and like take action and do it. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to relay that to anybody who's like on the fence or trying to get started. Like, do it. I guarantee you, go out, send your offers, call Kyle and be like, what do I do, man? He'll coach you through a deal. I guarantee you, and it'll be win-win.
Yeah. I enjoy
you're
that.
Right. You just got to do it.
So let's talk about you. You did the Aggie 100. How did you grow so fast?
Action taking, the eagerness to learn. I mean, like, these are things that I guess you can't really teach, right? You have to want it yourself. But I've always wanted to be successful, and I like being successful, and not like a better than that. It's just, and I don't know, maybe at the end of the day, it's just a borderline insecurity, but it's like, I'm wired to like be better. I want to always be better, and not even then better than you, because I want everyone to rise with, you know what I mean? It's like, I just am, perfection is like not possible, because there's always something you can do better and look back on. And I love sharpening those knives, right? Man, we did this, but what if we did this next time? A lot of A/B testing. So I did a lot of throwing stuff out of the wall, seeing what sticks, and a lot has stuck. But I'd say if you can afford coaching, you can get with the right coach and have that mentorship and not even pay for it. Like, what I always say is, I don't want to coach people. Like, I don't want you to pay me a fee for me to tell you what to do. I want you to come work for me, because then both of us are going to make more money than coaching, and you're not going to get mad if you don't succeed. It's like, you're going to not succeed because you're in-house not doing the things that you should do, rather than just me saying, here's what you got to go do, go take action. Right.
Yeah. And we're coming up in a different market than when you had your massive growth and things stuck and they worked. Is there anything that you see coming down the pike now that makes you want to change your model at all to adjust to the new market? Or are you just going to be able to do the same thing and just it applies?
We're really good at listings. So we're actually going to have to go after buyers, and there are people on the team who like buyers. So I'm trying to get the acquisitions guys, if they do generate buyers and they don't want to go out and show them, it's like, hey, you'll still get a cut, refer it out, and do that method.
How about your investment side of the business? What do you see coming down next year, you think? 2024.
So 2023, we scaled back. I swear we were flipping 1 out of 2, like physically owning it, rehabbing like Chip and Joanna, aside from just flipping the contract.
Right.
We were doing about 50%. Then we went down to about 20% tops. And I'm now ready to kind of move back up to 50% based on what the Fed's saying with the interest rate, unhikes, whatever, reductions.
Right. You're thinking the current administration is going to put pressure to lower the interest rates, or the market? I think the inflation came out today that it was 3.1%. So do you think they're going to ease off on the rates?
Yes. I think a lot of what we talked about, those layoffs not hitting media, I think that's happening. If you pay attention to the Fed, I'm sure you do. I do like crazy because, number one, I find it interesting, but it really does dictate exactly what you're talking about. What strategy should we go for? So rates literally a month ago were like 8%. They've naturally dropped down to 7.03 is what they are on the Fed, the St. Louis 30-year mortgage. So it updates weekly. I believe next week we'll be under 7. And I think in February, right then, we'll be at, I'm going to call 6.5.
6.5.
Maybe
right.
6.25.
So we're calling it. When this thing goes live, 6.5.
I'm calling it.
Okay.
I'm calling 6.5. That's what I'm going to bet on.
Okay. And in reality, that's not a horrible interest rate, like historically speaking.
No.
Like I think I paid more when I got my first house in 2002. I think it was somewhere around that range. It might have been more. It might have been higher than that. But the FHA in 2002, I guess we could look it up, but it wasn't 5%. It wasn't 3%. I know that.
Right. I'm with you. It's all the new time home buyers. What do they know? They know 6, 7, 8%.
Yeah.
So they got to buy affordable property, and somebody buying a luxury home now is going to have to put a good amount down and stuff like that. But is that not just normal real estate? You've been in it longer than I have. You know what I mean? And it's funny because we got this offer today. It's on a flip. It's been on the market for a little over 30 days. We just hit that point where I dropped it only $2,500, but I could tell it's like we're getting a bunch of showings. I know this price is good, but people just aren't moving forward yet. So we got this FHA offer, right? A little bit lower in seller concessions, and people are like, "Oh, I don't know if you're going to take it." I'm like, guys, this is normal. This is what real estate is. FHA buyers are usually the normal buyer.
Yeah.
And then you have to work with them. And then you run back into that whole potential appraisal situation and concessions. But to me, it's just like, I like it because there's less competition. We can get way more market share. And I don't want to say easier because it is harder, but some things are easier. And whenever it gets easier again, we're in a position, guys like you and I taking action with market share to dominate while everybody else is like, hey, I think I'm going to get my license now. But I do think optimistically, 2024 is going to be a cool year, but I don't know about 25 and 26.
2024, whether rates go down or stay the same, I don't think they'll go up, but either way, I'm going big. I'm going to be an aggressive buyer. We're gearing up to buy a lot of rentals.
Absolutely.
And we're going to burr the crud out of everything we can get. And then we're going to go to town, hold 5 to 7 years, get the max value we can out of the IRR, and then, tax write-offs as much as we can on depreciation, and then roll that again, and then just keep going heavy.
It's an interesting time, right? Because there were distressed buyers even when the real estate market was awesome, right?
Always. Okay,
so now there's still distressed buyers. Let's say even if there's a few more, or let's just say the same amount. There's distressed buyer and non-distressed. Non-distressed buyer hasn't changed much, whether it's the up market or the down market. They got their good debt. They got the good interest rate. They're going to keep it. They're probably going to move only if they have to. This distressed buyer in the up market had a lot more backbone than they have now because there's a lot less guys out there buying and sourcing deals.
Correct.
So right here, like you scaling up and me talking about we're doing it big, is the distressed buyer is more distressed now than they were in that up market. So you can get so much better of a deal, more equity in your rental right off the bat, that you're going to love guaranteed next year getting into it, because you can get a much more smoking deal right now. But then there's people who aren't distressed. They're just like, take it or leave it. You pay me a fair price, we'll make it work. But then the people that are distressed, it's just like, I get your situation. I'm not all about greed. I'm here to help you. Obviously, we are a we are a for-profit business, but those people right now are willing to take substantially lower than they were a year and a half ago. Yeah. That's what I like.
Yeah. When I make offers on distressed seller situations, when it's not listed by an agent, I run comps and I show them exactly what their comps are in the neighborhood. I tell them exactly what an estimate would be to rehab the property to the condition that it needs to be in. And then I tell them, hey, this is what it's going to cost me. This is how much that I anticipate hopefully making in equity in this deal. And I'm very clear, and I have them sign off on it, initial it and everything. It's like, that way nobody can come back and say, you stole a house from my grandma. I'm like, no, I absolutely did not. I was very clear.
Yeah.
And I'm not greedy because somebody else would have paid more if that was the case. It's just, this is what it has to happen for it to be worth me buying. And in exchange, I'm closing on this house on the day they want to close. And I'm paying, there's no conditions. I'm not asking them to replace the Federal Pacific panel in the closet. I'm not expecting the roof to hold water out. Like, I'm buying it as is, where it is. My money is not an option period. It's hard. I'm not walking from the deal. And
we're not buying from people incapacitated.
Yeah. Like these are people that are like, they need to sell it because they want to buy another house somewhere else. I can't tell you how many houses I've bought from people that if they would have just taken better care of their home, they probably would have been happy there. But instead they trashed their home and now they're ready to go buy another home that's not trashed. And so I probably should have kept up with them. I should have kept up better with them and then kept up with the new house. I have a new.
I think you've done all right, man.
New opportunity every 7 years or 5 years. But no, that's, and I've had good luck working with real estate agents that needed a buyer that could step in and close without any just period. They could close on a certain date so that their buyer could buy the home that they're upgrading to. And these weren't always distressed homes. These are just homes that just, maybe they needed some updating or something, but they didn't have to worry about inspections or close dates. So those were not even distress, but like opportunities, I guess. And you're kind of solving a need. And part of that need was they just needed a definitive close.
Yeah, man. In my opinion, people who are like, oh, you're taking advantage of people. It's like, you're an idiot. You're not there. You're not seeing how many people's lives we're making better and helping people and how much like those people come up to the office, bring cookies, send referrals, literally treat you like a grandson. You know what I mean? It's awesome.
Yeah. I think there is a big misunderstanding of the role that real estate investors play. And I think there's a mindset and this comes down to the entrepreneur, the person that makes things happen, and a creative person versus somebody that sits back and takes the world that it's handed to them instead of creating the world they want. And so the people that sit back and take the world that's handed to them, they're sitting in their job. They may like it, they may not, doesn't really matter, but they just think they don't get the choice. And we get to create our choices so that when they see somebody making a profit off of something, that blows their mind that you got to create that instead of just taking what came to you.
Right.
Let's get back to a little bit on how real estate changed your life. If you could just sum it up in just a couple of sentences and somebody just out of the blue said, man, you're in real estate. How did it change your life? What would your answer be to that person?
I mean, to put it simply and cheesy in one word, freedom. Just not, car business. You're there all the time, working there. And I go to the office all the time, but drop my kids off and pick them up from school, right? Yeah. Those are my office hours in between there. So that's nice. Originally, and it's still a monetary goal, right? Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But when I first started, it was money, right? It's like, okay, man, God, if I can make $250,000 of revenue, that would just be amazing, right? Mm-hmm. Well, then you hit that and then you're just like, oh, well, that's kind of empty. Now what? And it's like the next one, and every single benchmark there has been that way. However, what I have found, finding purpose in helping people achieve their monetary goals, that motivates me so much more than money nowadays. But don't get me wrong, I like money, I like nice stuff. Mm-hmm. I do want to be a billionaire. I'm very vocal about it. I'm not going to screw you over along the way. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We're going to get there. And then, maybe it will be 80 years old, but that is a monetary goal of mine. Mm-hmm. However, I'm finding a lot of fulfillment in helping people do well and start from scratch. And literally, I can't believe this guy or girl would succeed in sales. And then they're coming in and just dominating because they're doing what they're told. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That to me is awesome. That's my favorite part, and probably yours too, of entrepreneurism.
You were talking earlier about, and this, I don't know why I'm coming back to this, but it's a story that I keep rehashing. And there's a big brokerage firm down the street from you off of 170. You might know the name of it. It's real big. You might have referenced one of their people earlier in the story or in our podcast. And I was postcarding houses. This is a few years ago. And I was postcarding houses and I got a really good deal lead. And I went and go walk the house, and it was a tenant occupied rental. it needed some work, nothing crazy. They did have a pit bull in there. They did have the backyard was all messed up, but it was a great location. The rental rate was okay, but not where it should be. It was poorly managed, but not horrible. And I was walking the house with this husband and wife that owned it. And I'm like, okay. And they were not young. I mean, they were 60s. And so I asked them, so, what do y'all do? And they're like, well, we're over at, I almost said that brokerage, but we're over at this brokerage. And one of them, he was a trainer. He trained new agents. He was the guy that would train them on contracts and all of that, all the new agents. And I'm like, interesting. Okay. So why are you selling the house? And there's a couple of things that were just fascinating. It's like, so why are you selling this house? He's like, well, we're going to retire in a couple of years. And, we don't want to have rentals when we're retired. I was kind of flabbergasted by that. I'm like, I thought the opposite was true. You wanted to have more. And then,
right.
And then, so I didn't, because I was wanting to buy the house. I hadn't had it in contract yet. And I was like, okay. So the next question, my follow-up was like, wait, you said you train agents at XYZ brokerage firm and like new agents on how to do the business? Like, yeah. Why didn't you just list this house in the MLS?
Right. That's what I was thinking.
He's like, well, it's a rental house. It's tenant occupied. You can't really list those houses. I was like, wait, you're training people. So I was like, oh, wow. So every listing y'all have come in the office has a tenant in it. Like, just send that over to me. Just don't even bother trying to list those.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I was like, this guy is training other agents out there. And this is coming out being a empty broker. Like, this guy doesn't understand the business or how to execute the business. And he's stuck on this. Every house has to be this, grand design little home that's just perfect, Better Homes and Gardens, ready to go, turnkey, and not a problem solver agent or broker in that regard. Mm-hmm. So that's where those, there's a big difference between some real estate brokers. So it's good that you invest in your team and coach them, because I don't think that's real common.
I appreciate that.
I don't think that's real common at all.
It takes a lot of time and effort.
Yeah. And the thing is and I don't know your broker splits, but hopefully it's good to you, because it should be worth it, because people need to pay for what they get. And, some people they want to go the cheapest route, and they're like, oh, well, this broker doesn't cost me but X amount of dollars per month, and I have unlimited transactions. I'm like, how many transactions is that guy going to help you do, or that lady? So
what if you had to work less and did 3 times as many transactions, and then you would make more? And that's that conversation. We do have that combo a lot. But to each their own. I'm looking for the person who wants to be molded, given leads, right? And we do have a fair split, but then we also teach you how to do investments, so you can get flat fees on any acquisitions and or flip. And then if we buy it personally and flip it, you get a commission on the backside. So
I don't think we'd never mentioned the name of your brokerage, so you need to at least let that be known to everybody that's hearing this. They're like, "Who's this guy? I want to be on his team."
Yeah. Well, if it's anybody, we'd love to talk to you. But it's Summit Cove Realty, SUMMIT COVE. All that is, it was the name of the street that I lived on when I started the business. But I liked it. It had a cool ring. Yeah. And I hate that I sold that house, because I wish I would have kept it as a rental. Yeah. But anyway, it is what it is.
There's so many houses I wish I'd kept, but then I also look back and said, man, if I would have kept it, I wouldn't have been able to do X, Y, Z.
That's true.
I've sold so many houses just to keep the business going and to fund it, because I didn't take a paycheck from McCall Property Management for a long time. And the way I kept afloat and paid my bills was by flipping houses. I didn't want to flip houses. I wanted to hold on to them, but I had to flip them for my long-term vision. And, some of the houses I sold, I was able to take the money and reinvest into other homes. One of the homes is the first home my wife and I bought when we first got married. And, you're nostalgic about your first home together. Like that's a big thing. And
this was ours.
and I went through a layoff, or I got uninvited to work at a financial firm, and I was able to afford the house. I could keep it, but there's other opportunities that came up. We made the decision to buy another home. I used private money financing. That's most of my model's been through private money. And so I was able to get another good deal, semi-distressed, 100% financing, and part of the remodel paid for on private money. And then I sold the home that we came from, and I didn't pocket much. It was maybe 20 grand, maybe a little bit more, but that had to support me for my upstart for, my first year out of corporate world. And
heck yeah, man.
Talk about wake up. Like you make good money at a job and then all of a sudden it's gone. And then
Right.
you wake up the next day and you're like, how do I make $1?
Dude, exactly. Think about that. Think of this too. What if you're doing that job and you do your whole, well, two things.
Mm-hmm.
You get to year like 39, right? And then you get laid off, or you finish it all, right? And then your retirement goes down like 2020,
Mm-hmm.
COVID, or it goes down like flash crash 2017, '08. If you retired and you're not dollar cost averaging when it's down like that, you literally just wait for it to go back up, or you die and then it goes that way.
Yeah.
I don't want to relinquish my retirement to stuff that's out of my control.
Yeah.
Right. Real estate is within our control. We can create our own retirement. Mm-hmm. I personally don't believe 401ks are going to do people much good in the future.
I think that the 401k, and I used to be a Series 7 broker. Like I bought and sold securities for people, bonds, structured products. That's why I like the financing side of, how to make the numbers, margins and all that. And, the stocks and preferreds and all that. But, man, I'm not sold on it. Yeah, I have a 401k at the company and, we put money in there. But that's not I'm not putting my eggs in that basket as far as what I anticipate my retirement come from. I think 401ks, they're still new. People don't realize that. It's new.
70s, right?
Yeah, the generation that started 401ks is soon to be, they're just starting to retire. And I think we're going to see that we moved from having a pension environment where people had their pensions from working at XYZ company for so long to having 401ks where they have control over their own money.
That you can transfer.
The people like those financial firms, they're the ones that are making the money on that 401k stuff. I mean, there's some interesting books on the numbers on it. But the thing is that 401k, you've got to be so disciplined. When I was broke, I had to dip into my 401k. If I had a pension, I wouldn't have been able to. And so there's going to be a lot of people that didn't have as much, or my people have an option. Do they put 1% in or do they put 10% in their 401k? Some people do 10, some do 1. That 1's going to be really tough when it comes time to retire. And, you've got certain limitations on what you can invest in. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big fan of cash flow assets and assets that hold for appreciation. I tell people real estate, like a house, what's the worst that's going to happen? Like it burns down. As long as nobody gets hurt, you get an insurance check. Nobody's going to air up the tires and steal your house. And then, I mean, if the tenant doesn't pay the rent, like, we'll get rid of that tenant and it'll get back on track. I mean, it may take a few months to get it back to where it needs to be, but you still have a solid asset. It's not like I bought loose and it went to zero next week. Like it's there.
You can turn it back into cash flow, right?
Right. So I know when I was a kid, I remember 2 stocks that I bought. A couple. One is, when we went on a family vacation, we ate this really cool restaurant, and it was, I think it was called Planet Hollywood. You've seen it. They're still around.
I've heard of it.
I'm like, that's cool. Like it's all these movies and all these, famous people are invested in this, and those publicly traded. And I'm like, I went home, put my money into Planet Hollywood stock. They went bankrupt.
Oh my goodness! I
had no money.
That. Yeah, because they were like,
I didn't.
They were
have
like
any,
hard rock.
Yeah, so I didn't have any like big, retirement money in that, but that was like my understanding of like, I have no control, none, zero. Mm-hmm. And some people don't realize, but some of these corporations, the business model is to go bankrupt, and it's so they can restructure that debt. So some of these companies, they'll load up heavy on debt. They'll go bankrupt to restructure their debt so that they can take on all that debt to where they can invest in the future. Maybe it's equipment, whatever. Then go bankrupt, restructure their debt to where now they can service it better. But now they're ahead of their competitors because they got all this assets they were able to purchase with bad mortgage, bad loans. So
it's kind of a very smart, but a dick move.
Oh, it is. Well, I think we had a president that was kind of part of his business model. I don't know. Look it up. So
hey, one of the real estate gurus who's wrote a very, very famous book I'm not going to talk negatively about, but it's like the go-to. That's his business model as well.
Yeah. The thing is we don't have control over that 401k and the investments that are in it. We have no control, and you don't have control of dividends and the equity. There's just no control. The houses you do have control. I used to be a fixed income broker, and I had to cover New England and Florida. That was my region. And so I'd have little old ladies call me from Florida, say, "Hey, I've got $400,000." This is one lady I'll always remember. She's like, "I got $400,000, and it's got to last me the rest of my life. What can you do for me?"
Like, well, how old are you?
Well, yeah, and when do you plan on dying? How much do you need? Like, there's all those variables that I had that were not playing in her favor. She had to have so much money per year off of that. which, at that time, low interest rates, they weren't going to pay. She's going to dip into her principal forever and probably outlive her principal. But if I had full control and was able to do what was right for her, she just could have gone to Watauga and bought 4 houses cash.
I know, man.
And they would have been hedged for inflation. She would have lived just fine.
So my grandma is that way. She's now 80 or about to be. And she was just getting eaten alive by fees and tiny little non-conservative stuff and substantially less than 400 grand. And I'm like, Grandma, obviously my dad had to provide the credibility because I'm just a grandson, but it's like, we can help you get these 2 notes. And like one was in Missouri and one was in like, I don't know, somewhere like that. We basically got her a 10% yield and saved 20 grand liquid capital, which she probably blew or gave away to my cousins or something. But besides the point, but she was able to like grow her money instead of just literally dwindling and dying. And I think that is what we're nailing. As a 401k, you are dwindling and dying and trying to withstand. And I'm all for them. Don't get me wrong. I have them too. But if that's the only egg, like your basket, like you said, I don't want to put all my eggs in that basket. Like, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, because our entire economy globally is designed on ebbs and flows that are manufactured by our Federal Reserve. So they know what they're doing, the guys who created this. And it's not just like those attorneys, not in Kyle's and I's best interest. It is in the banks and the big businesses and et cetera. I'm with you, man. Like I could go about that stuff for days. I tap into that on Thursday. And that note meetup is just like, guys, I'm all for this. But if you go look at the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission website, it puts on there, and I highlight this, none of these things are backed and guaranteed by the federal government. And it's stocks, it's mutual funds, they put crypto on there, everything. The only thing that they put on there in an asterisk that is backed is a note. It's a real estate debt note. There's an asterisk right by it at the bottom, and I highlight it. It says, this is guaranteed and backed by the government. All of these other things are not. And I that's one of the reasons why they push the debt and the amortization and creating all that, because that is fully backed by the taxpayer. That other stuff, if it goes under, you're screwed.
Well, and I don't think people want to think too hard about it. I don't think they just want to blindly trust that whatever they're told is good. And, the person it's a salesperson that's telling them what it's supposed to be. And they want to believe it because they think that's their only hope. And it's not at all. Like it's, like you mentioned, private money notes, owning real estate. I've helped a lot of people make a whole lot more money on their money just by like lending on my flips or
it's awesome.
Or long-term rentals. Like it's just, and we're not talking like 2 or 3%. We're talking significantly more income. And I'm still a winner. I remember there was one person I borrowed some money for a rehab. I did a pretty big project and he was like, "Hey, I want to put money in." I'm like, "Well, I'll let you lend me the rehab on it." And so he lent me the rehab. I'm like, "That's great." And I was like, "Well, how much do you want?" He's like, "I don't know, just whatever you normally pay." And I paid him 12%.
1%. No,
I paid him 12%, 1% per month. And
awesome.
I sent him his money at the end because I like that setup because I just pay at the closing when I'm done. I don't think about it just straight up. And I wired him his money. He's like, "Whoa, wait, this is a lot more than I was expecting." I'm like, "Well, crap, you should have told me beforehand." But the whole point is like, we all won. Like on that deal, I made $82,000 on that one flip, and he made an extra 3 or 4 grand more than he thought or whatever. Like, so it was huge. Yeah. It was a big deal.
And that compounds, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So he did well. I did well. Everybody was happy and got to move it down the road and do it again. So
that's awesome.
Fun stories, man. I love real estate.
I know.
Yeah.
And there's for days. I mean, it's just, there's always a deal within a deal within a deal.
And that's the other thing. You just don't take it for what's presented at you. There's so many ways to make money in real estate.
Right. I've lost money on 3 investments, 3 flip houses. One of them, if I had knowledge of what I know today, we would have made very, very much profit. One of them was a sweet old lady moving to Atlanta, and we were buying her house. The market started to turn not last July, but the July before, July 2022, and we had a longer closing.
Mhm.
So I had somebody lined up to buy it. They back out I swear, like 3 days before closing. This is literally like an elderly woman
Mhm.
moving to be with her kids on dialysis, had her treatments, did all that. And it's like, I'm not going to be responsible for this lady not doing that. And
Mhm.
quite honestly, if that extra stress probably would have produced
Negative
potentially a
impact.
heart
Yeah.
attack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, that one had to make a decision. And then one of them is just like, you know what? I don't want to do this rehab. Let's just lose a little bit of money, call it a day. But being able to do that stuff
Mhm.
and gaining the knowledge is, like you said, the deal within the deal within the deal. If you really, really do your fact checking, your due diligence, you limit your opportunity for massive mistakes.
Yeah. And nobody bats 1,000. I've lost a few bucks here and there on some deals, but not very. I mean, I could count it on half of one hand. And looking back, I could have done them. And one of them that I'm thinking of is because we bought 6 houses at one time. So it's not like we
Dang.
could have reallocated our costs, I guess, between the different houses. So I made bank on 3 of them. 2 of them I did okay. 2 of them did okay, and one of them I lost like $6,000. Like, well, really, did I really? Because I made way more than
No,
on the other 5.
exactly.
So I still I brought money to the closing, but I made a lot
We'll
more.
call that a portfolio.
Yeah, portfolio.
The portfolio made a lot of money.
And I think I had one, and this is because I partnered on something with somebody, and I probably shouldn't have, because that's the way I am. But they viewed business differently. I don't like cutting corners on projects, and they were like, "Well, this paint was cheaper." I'm like, yeah, obviously, or that sort of like those are like the end buyer sees that, and so my standards are a little bit higher than the person that I partnered on that house was, and I mentioned this to somebody I talked to earlier this morning. Is like you can't save your way rich, and I think that's the same thing as like you can't skimp your way on projects either, because it doesn't.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it just doesn't amount. Like
it bites you in the back.
It comes back and gets you, because it's going to come up in an inspection, or it's going to come up when everybody walks to their house and they're like, "Yeah, you did awesome. You painted everything perfect," but all these ceiling fans are from the '90s. Well,
right.
They're good. They work. I love them. Like, those are the ones I had when I was a kid. Like, no, that's why you got a good deal on the house, because of that. So,
correct. Right.
Yeah. So those
You're
are
right, man.
things that, just because you're cheap, you don't get the big payoff. That's where the iBuyers don't get it, is they don't see that kind of thing.
Big time.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many open door homes I went into that was like, I can't believe they're even listing this in this condition. And you're like, there's stains all over the carpet. There's like,
well, they hired the cheapest person to walk through that home that doesn't even own a home, never has owned a home, and then they don't understand what they're looking for. They just have a checklist they're supposed to walk through with a video. You can't see dirt on a video. You can't see smells on a video. You can't see the little patterns that don't line up. Like, you just can't see that. And the person that makes the decision, they've never really been a real estate investor. They just had an algorithm, and then they're making a decision while they're sitting, 2 or 3 states away.
Right.
I can go on quite a bit. So, but I was doing research with other funds, and I'm like, who am I competing with out here? And I think I might have mentioned this when we were having coffee. And one of the ones that I was competing with, like, their numbers were like, they're okay. There were nothing to get excited about. But I'd be happy if I had their numbers. But when I asked them, like, why should I put my money with you versus another fund? And they're like, well, we got this proprietary software that, because, we're from Silicon Valley. I'm like, that's your answer? Your answers have not produced higher results than what I'm doing without proprietary information or programs. So I think too many people are putting too much credibility on those programs, and like, oh, well,
they are.
Yeah.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did Silicon Valley Bank not just go under?
Yeah.
And that was a lot of bad business decisions.
Well, yeah. And there's a lot of different compounding reasons for that. But one of them was like my experience when I was in fixed income brokering. Like, why did they have because you have to mark to market your debt. So if you have loans, you have to market to whatever the market value is. You can argue however you want on that. But the thing is like, if the rates go up, the values go down. Why would you, in an environment where the rates are going to go up because they're so low that they got to go up sometime, why would you buy a long-term debt knowing that it's going to get crushed when the rates go up? Like, crushed. which will automatically make sure that you don't hit your reserve number, which means you go under. You didn't have to have a crystal ball. I'm like, I'm not smart.
Right.
I didn't go to private school. I went to public school, but crap, I could have figured that out. Like, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
So, but they had an algorithm.
Right. I'm with you. It's that FaceTime. Algorithms are great. Formulas are great, but you got to do more than a formula, unless you're just like BlackRock and you can print money left and right. But I don't have that problem.
Yeah, money's free to them. Not yet.
I tell you what, if we can create a bank and get in touch with the Federal Reserve, then that's the end game.
Talk to me about that later. No, so there's a lot of things out there that can be done. There's mastermind groups that can solve that problem for you too.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. I mean, again, I loved a lot of stuff we're talking about. I'm excited about I think hypothecation is the term that they use at the banks, where they'll set up the node and get it. I've heard of like Susser Bank, I think maybe plays ball on that, but I want to touch base with you a little more specifically after the call.
I think I have two people that do that I think they use different banks that they can connect you with, and they're local. Like, they meet up off of 140 or 170. So
nice.
Not right down the road from you.
Super helpful.
So, all right, man. Well, I don't want to take up too much time. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience.
Yeah, man, I enjoyed it.
And being awesome. Upfront. And the thing is like, I just want people that listen to this podcast to understand that, like, there's no one way to make money in real estate. It's all like what you make out of it. And it's not as scary as people think it is. And it's not what you see on TV. Like, you are completely different than every other person I've visited with. And you've done so many different things, and you've got a lot to offer. So actually, if anybody wants to be a real estate agent, I think they really should spend some time sitting down with you and research that, because
I appreciate that.
It would be time well spent, because
we can help.
It's very important what broker you set your license with, and it's going to really direct the direction you go, of course, but then also, like, where you're going to be successful. And I like the part where you mentioned being able to predict if somebody's going to be successful or not. We don't know, but man, that hunger, that drive. I want to do personality exams on my new hires from going forward, but
yes,
like, that sense of urgency and that drive is very, very important. And I've seen that drive in people that didn't have the skill set and that worked out. And I've seen people that had all the skill set in the world, but didn't have that motivation or drive because they had that safety net. Or I've seen it where a lot of, I don't know, I've collected in my circle guys that'll come to me that their wives are uber successful, like, and this is multiple times. And they're like, they need to do something with their time. They need to be doing something. And then they end up, they're super smart, but they have no motivation because their wife makes crazy freaking money. All you have to do is, like, send this email. Like, like, I've seen that so many times. It's so interesting. So I don't know.
Dude, one of my favorite verses, mere talk leads to poverty. That's what comes to mind right there. Well, I say it, they're doing fine. But I would want to encourage the person on here, what can you learn from that story? If you're like me and Kyle, when you started and you didn't have a wife that made super uber amount of money, it's like, don't just talk about it, take action. Mere talk leads to poverty, but action leads to profit. Yeah. That's what I think King Solomon forgot to write that part, but no, I'm just kidding.
I like it. It's good. I'll believe it. I'll go with it. All right. Cool, well, man. Thank you so much. And we'll call it a podcast here, but thank you so much for spending your time. And again, you just got to get out there and do it. So thank you for sharing, Jeremy.
All right, man. Appreciate you having me.
You too. Thanks.